My name is Laquita Garcia, and I'm the statewide policy coordinator and one of the moderators here tonight. I want to encourage everyone to drop us a comment in the live stream to let us know where you're from, and we're glad that you're here tonight. So TOP is one of the largest grassroots organization in Texas, fighting every single day with our two fists. Those two fists are people power and political power. We build power in the streets at the ballot box. That means for the last decade, you've been able to find us in our teal shirts any day of the week, protesting in the streets and walking the county halls, making sure that judges know that we're serious about bail reform. That's what brings us here today. We want to set the record straight about the state's unjust bail system. And to do that, I'm going to turn that right over to Taryn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Taryn Almendarez. I'm a member in Dallas County, and I am here to talk to you about an overview of our cash bail system. We're going to talk about some terms that you may have heard before, but might not be quite sure of what they are. Some of those terms are going to be cash bail, posting bond, plea deals, and bail companies. So, how many of you have heard these terms used before? Drop a comment. Hi, Lloyd from Quick. Hi, Lloyd. I see you in there. If you are not sure what these terms are, it is totally fine. If you're watching live, you can respond in the comments with what you think the answer is, because we are going to do some trivia questions. So, oh, I see Patricia Murphy from Dallas. Hi, Patricia. All right, y'all. So, trivia question number 1, what is cash bail? Just write what you think it is. We'll take about 10 seconds. I see Eric Rodriguez. Hi. Hope Corpus Christi is doing all right. So, cash bail is used as a guarantee that a defendant will return for a trial or for hearings. We're going to go to our next question, question number 2. As a little bit of a hint, question number 1 will help you with the answer. How many systems of justice do you think we have in the state of Texas? The answer? The state of Texas operates under 2 systems of justice. One is for the rich and one is for the poor. If you have money, you get to leave jail while you wait for trial. You get to go home to your family, hire a defense attorney, fight to prove your innocence, or if you're guilty, you get the best possible outcome that your defense lawyer can get for you. But if you're poor and you can't afford your bail, you're going to sit in that same county jail until your case is heard and resolved. In the meantime, you might lose your home, your children, your job. Eventually, whether it's a month or 2 months or 3 months, maybe even more, a prosecutor will offer you a plea deal in exchange for your freedom. For many Texans, whether you're innocent or guilty, that's the only way out of jail. So they end up taking the deal just so that they can go home, often without being able to weigh in on what is going to happen to them. They end up having a criminal record. You don't get to evaluate that in the moment. You don't get to evaluate how that's going to keep you from having a home and how it can prevent you from applying for jobs. So our third question, who benefits the most from this exploitative system? I'll give you 3 options for this one. Communities, bail companies, or the state of Texas. We'll take a couple seconds. All right, I see people from Houston chiming in. Hi, Joy Davis. Hi, David. Hi, Marilyn. Okay, so the answer to this question, those that benefit from this system are the bail companies. Bail companies make their living off of this system. They'll say that they keep our communities safe, but the reality is that they simply keep poor people in jail, and they drive desperate others into unforgiving debt. Because you see, in order to get a bail company to help you help your loved one make your bond, you have to ante up 10% of the bail amount. Families will borrow and sell their earthly belongings just so that they can get that 10% that they need to pay a bail bondsman to get their loved ones out of jail. So, question number 4. What kinds of offenses make up the majority of those detained by current cash bail system? Your choices for this one are going to be violent offenses, nonviolent offenses, or large-scale drug traffickers. So what kinds of offenses do you think make up the majority of those who are detained by the current cash bail system? I see Bernard, Linda, and Andrew. I see Annalise has answered nonviolent offenses. All right, y'all. So the answer to question 4, ding, 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 Annalise, you got it right. It is nonviolent offenses. Many of the people who are detained are accused of low-level nonviolent offenses. 3 out of 4 criminal cases, in fact, in state trial courts are for misdemeanors that, if they were proven, would result in fines or less than a year in jail. We're destroying people's lives over nonviolent minor offenses. Question 5. This one's going to be a true or false question, so I want to see all your true and falses in that comments. Among the people who have similar charges and histories, all races are detained equally. So true or false? I need some Jeopardy music here. So the answer is false. Extensive research shows that Black and Latino people are more likely to be detained than white people, despite having similar charges and histories. Studies have found, for example, that African Americans face higher bail amounts and they're less likely to be released on conditions that don't involve paying money. Another concluded that being Black increases a defendant's odds of being held in jail pre-trial by 25%. 25% for being born the wrong color. Question 6. And I think that we only have 2 more questions, so 6 and 7. For number 6, how many inmates have a serious mental illness? I know this is really important to a lot of people, especially as we talk about changing our criminal justice system. Lots of people are talking about mental health and how that impacts the likelihood that someone will end up in jail. So how many inmates have a serious mental illness? It could be like 1 in 10, 1 in 20, 1 in 4. What do y'all think? See, Andrew Wright says 75%. Good guess, Andrew. All right. So, Nisi Bennett on the nose, 1 in 5. 1 in 5 jail inmates have a serious mental illness. Many others have behavioral health needs that the justice system is just not equipped to meet. For example, only 11% of inmates with substance abuse disorders in the justice system receive any type of treatment. Compared to white men charged with the same crime and with the same criminal histories, African American men receive bail amounts 35% higher. For Hispanic men, bail is 19% higher than white men. And we know that in minoritized communities, mental health care is just not treated at all. So our last question in our trivia rounds, question number 7, what happens if you can't afford bond? This is going to be fill in the blank. So write what y'all think happens if you cannot afford bond in the state of Texas. And I see so many of y'all participating. This is great. Thanks for being brave and trying out an answer. Even if you don't get it right, we're all learning something together today, right? All right. I see Annalise says that you're held in jail or potentially transferred to a state prison. Carol says you'll just sit in jail. So this is part of the answer, is that you do sit in jail. But those who cannot afford bond end up receiving harsher case outcomes. Sounds kind of weird, but let's break it down. They are 3 to 4 times more likely to receive a sentence to jail or prison than if they were able to bond out, go through the process. If they were able to leave, go home, and come back, those people are 3 to 4 times more likely to receive a sentence to jail or prison, and their sentences are 2 to 3 times longer. So although most women in jail are charged with nonviolent crimes, women are less likely to be able to afford a money bond. A study found that women in jail before trial earned scarcely more per year than the average bond amount of $10,000. So while these men and women and people languish in jail, they risk losing their jobs, falling behind in school, not getting vital medication, losing their homes and custody of their children. Moreover, studies have shown that just 3 days in jail makes some people more likely to be arrested on new charges. Additionally, money based systems release nearly half of the most dangerous defendants with little to no meaningful supervision. Well, great job, y'all. We've reached the end of the quiz. Thanks again so much for being brave and answering the questions. Hopefully, you got a great score. And even if you didn't, you learned some vital information about what is happening to our community members when they're sent to jails. For all these reasons, we have to reject the notion that the current system makes our community safer. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Carvel.
Hey everyone, this is Carvel, Right to Justice organizer here in Dallas County. Glad to have y'all with us tonight. Y'all don't need us to tell y'all how bad the system is, but the facts that Taryn went over in that quiz are somewhat astonishing to really, when you really sit back and look at it, it's crazy when you evaluate it and just see how bad and how misrepresented the system is for us. But, of course, here at top, we have the Right to Justice campaign, and it's been on the forefront to fight to reform our state's unjust bail practices. And so, just want to share a quick look at how our Right to Justice campaign has actually evolved over the years here since it started. Following Sandra Bland's death in 2015 in Waller County, there was a call of action from our membership to figure out how to do more around legal reform. And, of course, since then, our Right to Justice campaign, the banner that we do our legal reform work under, is our largest issue campaign. And so, with that being said, we've been part of this historic, you know, misdemeanor bail reform win in Harris County, been instrumental in the electoral victories of a cluster of progressive DAs here in Texas across the state. Just won library cards as an acceptable form of ID for law enforcement interactions with immigrant and undocumented communities in particular. And on top of that, these are policies that make a material impact in our day-to-day lives. So these are tangible wins that we've seen that the people power have came out with us and they fought with us for that. And in a general sense, the pandemic mainstreamed ideas that social justice movements have been fighting for centuries. Things like direct cash assistance, ending mass incarceration has been pursuing ways to decarcerate our jails. And also, the pandemic added an additional layer of urgency to get folks out of jails. And so we see that one of the most significant legal reform initiatives that we've been working on in the last 18 months is fundamentally changing the way the bailout process works in Bexar County. The architect of the work is one of our directly impacted staffers who is with us today, Laquita Garcia, and who you just heard from a little bit earlier before Taryn. And she's brought together county stakeholders, including the sheriff, the public defender's office, and the DA to streamline bailouts. And our work has directly led to a 5% reduction in the Bexar County jail population. So it may sound like a small amount, but these are people's lives, and every percentage counts, every person counts. And so, with that being said, Bexar County is the largest community bailout site in the country, and to date, we've bailed out 596 people there. Across the state, we've spent almost 1 million bailing folks out and providing immediate relief, like hotel stays, getting cars out of impound, providing food, bus and plane tickets to folks' networks. We're in the process now of thinking through how to export this model to other counties we work in, including Dallas and Harris. So the work in Bexar County highlights how important administrative action can be once folks who share our values, or at least a couple of them, are elected to office. I cannot understate the importance of winning policy change to our overall theory on how to transform Texas. And so we need policies that speak directly to the experiences of Black and Latino working Texans. And with that being said, I want to hand it back off to Laquita right now to introduce some of our top endorsed justice defending DAs. I think you may be on mute, Laquita.
All right. Thank you so much, Carvel and Taryn. You're doing a wonderful job, and I'm happy to share this space with you here tonight. So, everyone, I want to bring you together right now. It's our pleasure today to have with us some of the most hardworking progressive DAs in Texas who are doing their part to curb mass incarceration in their respective counties. I'd like you to join me in welcoming to the StreamYard stage DA Mark Gonzalez from Nueces County,
How's it going, everybody?
DA John Crusoe from Dallas County,
Good evening, everyone.
Joe Gonzalez from Bexar County,
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
and last but definitely not least, Jose Gatsa out of Travis County.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see all of you.
All right, we're going to hear from our district attorney. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me not forget the wonderful Mr. Brian Middleton out of Fort Bend County. I am so sorry, Brian.
No problems, no worries. Hello, everyone.
We're about to hear from all of our DAs in an effort to set the record straight on some of the most common misconceptions and misinformation about the bail reform in our state. They're going to bring you the facts tonight.
Alrighty, y'all. So for our first question of the night, this one's going to be for you, Dallas County's own DA Crusoe. The question is, what do you believe is the biggest misconception out there at the moment about bail reform?
Well, first of all, I think the biggest misconception generally is that the system works well when we know it doesn't. In fact, it impacts poor people negatively way beyond what is reasonable and necessary for a functioning criminal justice system. The other thing is that there has been a song being sung across the United States that bail reform and violent crime go together, and that because of bail reform, we have violent crime. When in fact, that's not true. Here in the state of Texas, violent crime started to go up in 2011, long before we had any thoughts or plans or implementations of bail reform. In fact, we have looked at people who have benefited from bail reform here in Dallas County, and the number of people who have gotten out on low-level offenses where they got personal recognizance bonds instead of having to have small amounts of money that they didn't have is less than 1%. It's a fraction of a percent. So there's really no truth to that bail reform and violent crime go together. But I do think that what has happened is bail reform has changed the bail industry. And when all of those low-level crimes were available for small amounts of cash to fill up their bank accounts, they're no longer there. And so when people do post cash bonds, sometimes $100,000, $250,000, $500,000 for violent crimes, they're able to post them because the bonding companies have changed the rules. And instead of taking 10%, they take less than 10%. Instead of securing it with some type of collateral, a house or something like that, property, they no longer do that. So the people are able to get out. They may commit a new crime, they may not. But the fact that they get out in and of itself sometimes is disturbing to the community. But it's not because of bail reform. It's because they had the money. It's because the rules have changed from the bonding companies. And so that's the biggest misconception, I think, is that there's a correlation between bail reform and violent crime, when in fact there is none.
Alrighty, thank you so much, DA Crusoe. We're going to turn it over to Carvel for the next question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering that, DA Crusoe. You always have helped us with a lot of good information. Thank you for touching on that. I want to go ahead and get this next one for Bexar County's Joe Gonzalez. And so, real quick, Joe, our question for you is, in what ways do you feel legislation proposed and passed in the Texas legislature this year will impact our communities starting in January?
Thank you, Carvel, and I'll try and be brief. A lot of what I'm going to say is going to be a little repetitive because Taryn did an excellent job at the beginning identifying the problems with the current bail system, but I think it bears repeating, and that is that with the current bill, Senate Bill 6, what happens is that impacts certain communities across Texas, particularly people of color. We've talked about that we have two different systems, the rich and the poor. And we all know that the majority of the poor segment, the poor side, are people of colors. I'm sorry, people of color. And so that's who is overwhelmingly impacted by this new legislation that severely limits who can get out on a PR bond. What we have, it basically is a system, as Taryn explained, where the rich, because they have the ability to bond out, because they may have that amount, the 10% in their bank account, or they get it from a loved one, and the poor person can't do that. He's going to sit in jail, languish until his court date. A lot of times they come to court and they will enter a plea just to get the case resolved. So we know that that happens historically. I'm the DA in Bexar County, but I spent 20 plus years as a criminal defense lawyer. And I know a lot of my previous clients said, look, just give me the best deal you can get for me, because I just want to go home. I want to go back to work, even though they may not be guilty of the crime. So we know that impacts that segment of society. The other thing that's troubling about this new legislation is how it severely limits charitable bond organizations, people like TOP. And by the way, I want to personally thank TOP for all the hard work that you all do across the state. I personally have seen it with the work that Laquita and Michelle and other people that have come down here and done tremendous work. So thank you. My hat's off to you. But what happens is basically they're being treated differently. That is, these organizations like TOP that are attempting to bail out, as Carville mentioned, differently with strict requirements that the bonding companies don't have. And so because of that, you have a disparity in the way the bail system operates. Bondsmen, I mean, when you think about it, the bonding company is a business. They operate for profit. And so if they have the ability to bond somebody out and they don't have to be subject to the same requirements that these charitable organizations are, that's fundamentally unfair. And that is one of the ways that I see is definitely wrong with the way this legislation has been created.
Appreciate your thoughts on that, Joe. Our next question of the night is for DA Jose Garza of Travis County. DA Garza, what do you think is the origin of these anti-bail reform narratives taking place nationwide? And how, in your day-to-day work, are you countering these narratives?
Well, I think it's important to start with the information that DA Crusoe shared with us. He talked about the song that is being sung all across this country and all across this state, that bail reform and violent crime go together. We know that that is false. And it is important for us to know and to remember who it is who wrote that song and who is singing it. And DA Gonzalez touched on this. It is the bail bond industry. It is the very people who stand to profit from this broken system, and the very people whose bottom line, whose financial interests, whose wealth is threatened by reform. I think it's important for people to understand that it doesn't have to be this way. There are other systems that we know of and that work. For example, when you think about our federal system, that system primarily is focused on community safety. But at the state level, where the bail bond industry has access to legislators, they have succeeded in establishing a wealth-based system at the state level. We know that, as I said, a public safety approach would be contrary to their interests. But we have the opportunity in counties across the state to reject that framework and to do our best to adopt a public safety approach. And so what we are doing in Travis County is working hard to reject the notion that there must be a wealth-based approach to bail. That we ask our prosecutors every single day to ask a simple question, which is, does the person who is accused of a crime, does the person who is seeking bail pose a risk, pose a threat of danger to our community? And if they do, our position is that they should be held in custody. But the fact is that the overwhelming majority of people charged with crimes in our state do not pose a threat of ongoing violence to our community. And the overwhelming majority of people who are released prior to trial do not reoffend, do not commit new crimes. Let me make just one last point here, Laquita, if I can. The reason that it is so important to reject this wealth-based approach is because a wealth-based approach is a threat to our public safety. When you separate people from their jobs, from their families, simply because they can't afford to pay to get out, that causes instability in that family and in that community. And instability is what sets the stage and what is responsible for making our communities less safe.
DA Garza, it's so great to see you again, and thank you so much for that great response. We're so glad to have you with us tonight. Up next, we have a question for Fort Bend County DA, Brian Middleton. Welcome, Brian. So our question for you is, how are myths about bail reform endangering our communities?
Wow, that is an important question. But first of all, I've got to give a shout out to my people, the Teal Seals of the Mighty Texas Organizing Project, who are always striving hard and making sure that the voice of the people is heard. As the mission states, let's take it to the top, always constantly making sure that the people's concerns are being heard by the people at the top. It's all about accountability. So thank you. One of the problems, the myths that's being perpetuated in America is that these laws affect those people. It's a part of the system of double standards in America, and that this myth that only those people get in trouble, so that's the only people that need to, be concerned about this. But the reality of it is, most people can't come up with $1,500 on the drop of a dime. So what ends up happening is people get arrested for low-level offenses like DWI and other minor offenses, and they cannot bond out, and they end up losing their jobs, and their families suffer, and the community is not endangered by them being released pre-trial. The other biggest myth is that the most dangerous criminals typically have a lot of money. And so it has the opposite effect, is that you're rewarding the most dangerous criminals because they have the ability to post high bonds and release back into the community where they can cause further harm. Whereas the person who's a low-level offender who's probably gainfully or most likely gainfully employed, who would be otherwise eligible for a personal bond and safely released into the community, is discriminated against because of these myths about what criminal behavior is. Double standard in America is that our laws say you're presumed innocent, but what happens to people when they're simply alleged to have committed a crime is that they lose all their humanity and their rights. And so we're fighting not just bail reform, we're fighting hypocrisy, and it's in all forms and at all levels.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much for that thoughtful answer, DA Middleton. Our next question is for our fifth justice defending DA, Mark Gonzalez of Nueces County. And for folks on the live stream wondering, that's where Corpus Christi is at. So, DA Gonzalez, our question is, what do you believe our best weapon is when it comes to sharing the policy benefits of progressive bail reform?
Before I answer that question, though, I would like to say Corpus Christi is also known for Salina, Quintanilla, and Waterburger. But when it comes to bail reform is just the tip of the iceberg. You're talking about a system that needs a huge overhaul, a system that needs to be taken apart. And if we put it back together, take into consideration all these things. But one of the main weapons that we have is what we're doing here tonight. You know, we're all coming together, we're educating each other, we're using facts, we're using data, we're using things that we can go out there and empower ourselves with and have these conversations with other people. We're also spreading awareness. That's just one of the main weapons that we have, is to spread awareness. And you know, we need to let the public know that every time they think someone goes to jail that they're bad people, and that's just not the case. You know, I used to be a criminal defense attorney, and I would represent all kinds of just regular folks that found themselves in a bad spot or in a hard place. And most people would think that you know, communities are safer with people in jail, and the reality is the benefits of bail reform, in fact, make our communities safer when people are able to not be in jail, when you have a workforce that can get out of jail and go to their job, when you have you know, parents and caretakers who can get out of jail and care for their children and care for those individuals that they have to care for. And so I think all those things are benefits of bail reform, and we just have to let everybody know. It's a new song that we have to sing, as DA Garza indicated, and I think if we continue to sing it, at least in my county, I know that when people aren't in jail, we're saving the taxpayer almost $83 a day for every single person that isn't there. And so that's what we must do, is continue to have interactions like these, whether it's over the internet, whether it's in person, and educate everyone about all the benefits of bail reform, and in fact making the community safer, because one night in jail can cost you your job, one night in jail can put stress on your family, and one night in jail can cause you to lose a lot of things, and the collateral damage of that alone is something that can't be undone. I mean, if you think about it, over 500,000 people who are unconvicted are sitting in jail right now just because they can't afford to get out. Like so many of us have said, the bad guys, they got the money, and so they can get out of jail at will. And so there's something wrong with that, if you ask me. And so I continue and hope that everyone out there will continue to educate each other and bring awareness to all this that we speak about.
Yes, thank you so much.
Alrighty, y'all, we just heard some fire answers from our DAs to our questions, and now it's a time where you get to ask questions in the audience. You can ask questions if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube, we'll be able to see them. So if you have any questions for the DAs, drop your questions in the chat, and we'll be able to bring them up on the screen and ask the DAs. I think we're a little bit ahead right now, but that's really awesome. I think it's because we have had so many people that were engaged in our stream, right, Laquita and Carvel?
Yeah, right on. Yes. Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
Yeah. Invite your friends out right now. They can still join the stream right now and get in on the live questions. So
yes, absolutely.
Hop over and invite people right now.
And if y'all are interested in getting involved with the Right to Justice campaigns that we have in our different counties, you can visit our website at organizedtexas.org. There you'll find information about the different work that we do in TOP. I know that for our Right to Justice campaign, we meet every other Thursday. I can probably confirm the next date of our meeting, but come on out. You know, I just joined TOP about a year and a half ago now, and it's just been a great way to learn more about how I can help people in my community. And I'm seeing some great questions rolling in. This one from Annalise Keene Peterson. Question for the DAs. How do you propose that we approach bail reform within the current justice system, which we know is racist and discriminatory? Who wants to go first? Should I pick on David Cruz?
I'll speak up if that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I think we have some models around the country, especially in this state and Harris County, where there was a lawsuit filed and it's been litigated extensively. I don't know that it's completely ended. Here in Dallas County, there's a lawsuit filed, and it's in the process of litigation. And what we have seen in the district court here were some orders that actually kind of leveled the playing field, plus the philosophy of some of our judges, and of course this administration, my administration, in reference to bail and who's in and who's not. This office, for example, I have 4 people who look at every day, who screen the individuals who are in jail who did not bond out the night before. And it is quite common for us to approach the judges and request a hearing on that, and to see if we can relieve this person of being in jail by a combination of things. Of course, a personal recognizance bond would be one of the ways, a lowering of a bond, or a combination of that and certain jail conditions. So there are ways that we can work within the current system to make it better. But of course, the most effective thing to do to change the whole system have been the federal lawsuits. And then, of course, if we could have a sensitive governor, lieutenant governor, and legislature, that would be even better. We don't have that right now. And so we need to vote. We need to vote in another governor here in this next election so that we have someone whose values are the same as ours, and who will listen to our arguments and who will sign the appropriate legislation to change what has been quite appropriately described as racist and discriminatory.
I'm willing to go next. I think that is the first step that John just mentioned. Is we know that there is racism in every facet of life, not only in education and business, but in law enforcement and prosecution as well. We saw that as a result of George Floyd, that DA's office around the country should take a second look at how they prosecute these kinds of cases to see if change was needed. We certainly have done that here in Bexar County. But it's important for the public to understand that we are a cog in the wheel of justice. We only have so much we can do when someone is brought in. We can recommend a PR bond, for example, but it's up to the magistrate judge who is reviewing the case and determining probable cause to be willing to grant a PR bond. So that's the most frustrating thing, is we may be recommending all day long that a person get out on a PR bond, but it's up to the judge. But there are things that we can do. For example, in our office, we operate under a presumption of release for low-level misdemeanor offenses. We also have a robust diversionary program where we try and avoid people even going to jail with our cite and release program, with our drug declination policy, where we don't even accept, unless there's something aggravated about it, we don't accept misdemeanor possessions of a misdemeanor amount. Criminal trespass of the homeless, unless there's something aggravated about it, we don't accept those cases. 2 people, and Laquita knows that, 2 people died in the Bexar County Jail because they languished there because they couldn't bond out on a criminal trespass case. They were both homeless. As a result of that, we initiated this policy. So there are things that we as prosecutors can do to lead the way.
Alrighty, our next question comes from Miguel Martinez. What would it take to remove money bail in our cities and create a better pretrial services department to handle the bond and supervision for most defendants, like the system that they have in Washington, D.C.? Great question, Miguel. Who'd like to go first? Maybe I'll pick on DA Middleton.
Yeah, I was trying to make sure I understood the question. Yeah, I mean, it's going to require overhaul of the system, a lot more people involved in the process. So what that means is more money, more resources, more human capital being invested. You're going to have large departments to, assemble the information necessary to make prudent bail decisions. And, DC, a lot better funded than Fort Bend County. And a lot more forward thinking in Texas. So some people just need to catch up on their philosophy, and people in Austin need to understand what smart on crime is about, and spending money wisely, which will keep our community safe and fair.
And would anybody else like to add on to that?
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. It's also going to take educating all the stakeholders involved. I know here we have almost a revolving door of a population of individuals who continuously get arrested, right? And so it's costing our county a lot of money. And so when you try to change the narrative and saying, well, these people belong in jail, well, the narrative can be, well, we want individuals not to be in jail because it costs too much. What can we do? Well, let's provide them with those services, whether it's counseling, whether it's medication, or just like the pretrial supervision where they provide these individuals all those things. So right now we're in the process of securing a facility where we can actually take people, which with the help of a law enforcement led diversion, so that way they're not going to go to jail. That way they're not going to die in jail, and they will be receiving the services that they probably needed to get instead of self-medicating out there on the streets. And so it took a lot for that to happen. I never thought I would see something like this happen in Nueces County, which is completely underfunded. We, until recently, were the second lowest paid prosecuting attorneys in the state. And so for us to have an actual building where we can take people is something that I'm going to be very proud whenever I see it actually come to light. But if you asked me when I first got elected if this would ever even happen, I would say it's a long, long shot. And so things are changing. It's just going to take time.
Thank you so much. All right, our next question, I'm going to try my best. Ide Uagabale asks, what are some of the most successful tactics that y'all have seen used by activists to push for bail reform?
Well, I think if I can take that, I think the election of progressive county commissioners, first of all, and judges and district attorneys are the most successful tactics. Those are the people who, I think as Mark said, are the stakeholders in the current system. We have the ability to change a lot of things right here without legislation from the state. And of course, in Texas, if you're waiting on legislation from this governor and lieutenant governor, we'll never get there. So I think county commissioners, judges, and district attorneys have been the most successful tactic to change the system. And I think all of us will agree, we're not going to change this system in the next week or 2 or 3. But what we're doing is laying the groundwork for systemic change. It's going to take us and those after us, and it's going to take other stakeholders to do this. And it's going to take time. And we have police and other officials and some judges, to be quite frankly, around the state who believe in maintaining this old system. And so we're going to have to show progress. We have to show the data, and we're going to have to prove that our communities are better off when we implement bail reform and give people an opportunity at life and not to lose their homes, their jobs, et cetera, which of course creates more crime. And in fact, bail reform reduces crime. We know that. And it's just going to take time to get that message across and to implement it fully.
If I can, I would love to just add quickly to the great points that D.A. Crusoe made and others have made. And I think when it comes to the question of tactics, I think there is a really important element that we should talk about. And that is we need to talk about the voices that those people in power, district attorneys, judges, county commissioners, hear most often. And I think the reality is that the voices they do not hear most often are the voices of the people who are most directly impacted by these failed policies and these failed approaches. And so it is so critically important that that those of us who live in these communities, in communities of color and working class communities, in the communities that we know are most directly impacted, that we be seen, that we be heard, that we not, there are those who want us, all of us, to sit down and shut up. And we have to be, continue to be dogged and determined in raising our voices. And then finally, D.A. Crusoe started us with this point. Ultimately, we have to win more elections. And so that means taking our advocacy from the courthouse steps, from the commissioner's court chambers to the ballot box. And if we can take that energy and translate it into votes, change will come.
Let me add one more thing. What everybody said has been so important, but I would like to replace the word tactics with strategy, because I think of tactics in a negative connotation. Sometimes you think of it as what a military, what the military will do. I think what we need to focus on is exactly what groups like TOP are doing. All of us here, all of us progressive DAs are members of our national progressive DA's group, and we see some of our brethren across the country being attacked. The prosecutors in San Francisco and recently Los Angeles and Philadelphia. And fortunately, the one in Philadelphia survived the attack. So the best thing that groups like TOP can do is establish the credibility. I think now TOP in Bexar County, when people talk about TOP, people that are running for office stand up and take notice. They want the endorsement of TOP, just like TOP endorsed, I think, all of us here in this group. That means a lot to other people that are running for office. And I agree with Jose. The more credibility the TOP and other organizations have, the more we're going to be able to move the needle and continue to do what we all want to do.
Thank y'all so much for those great questions. And it is wonderful to see y'all like coordinating together, backing each other up, expanding these answers. It's great. Our next question comes from John Rosenthal. Question for our DAs. Messaging will be key for us in upcoming elections. So, two-part question. One, how do we sharpen focus and simplify powerful messaging on bail reform to counter conservative anti-reform messaging? And part two, how can we spread the word and empower allies and others to spread positive messaging? If y'all feel strongly about one part or the other,
Well, let me take a shot at it, because we have something unique here in Dallas. And, I have fought back, and I have submitted to TOP some PowerPoints that I put together on bail that I submitted to the Dallas City Council, to the Dallas Morning News, et cetera, to get the record straight. An interesting thing is happening here. And the argument about progressive reforms and bail reform especially are beginning to go away in Dallas County. Here's why. We have a new police chief. He's been on not quite a year, and he came here armed with criminologists from the University of Texas, San Antonio, Joe's hometown. And they have put in a strategy that is reducing so far 7% violent crime, murders, aggravated robberies, aggravated assaults. And when you have a police force that polices better, that responds appropriately, and that instead of going after low-level offenders and claiming victory by locking them up in jail, this police chief knows better, and his criminologists know better. And what he has done is focused on violent criminals and violent crime. He's even stopped the arrest, and because we don't prosecute any first-time misdemeanor marijuana. And as mentioned, we don't prosecute criminal trespass of the homeless and the mentally ill. And he understands that. And so what has happened in this community is that argument that something going on here in the DA's office is causing crime to go up has been just completely squashed, because we have a new police chief with research-based tactics, and crime is going down. So really what it has done is taken that out of an election here in Dallas County. I don't know if that's true in every county, but it certainly is true here. And I've always said that violent crime is not suppressed at the courthouse. All we do is try cases. Violent crime is suppressed by the police, by the policing, the tactics of the police. If they focus on low-level offenders, traffic stops, and all of that nonsense, then they'll never get to the murderer, the rapist, and the robber. Because while they're taking that young kid to jail, that person's driving past, waving at them. So once again, we have a new police chief with new tactics that are working. And what I think it has done here is suppressed all of that counter argument about reform, and especially bail reform in the Dallas community.
Yeah, I'd like to add in there, what the opposition typically talks about. They talk about denial of freedoms. And so we need to use this same messaging and saying, hey, look, we're a country of laws and principles, including presumption of innocence, and these laws are denying people's freedoms. The other thing is to appeal to their spiritual nature, and their patriotism, and saying is that we're a nation of morals, and unfortunately we have these double standards. So we just use their same tactics, which usually comes across as fear mongering, but it is something that motivates people. So if we just rephrase the issue as being a denial of freedom, I think you'll have a broader base support and appeal to people's patriotism. It cuts both ways.
All right, y'all. Thank you again for the great answers there. We have our next question from Gracie Armijo. Will you be more vocal when bail reform is being trashed? In Harris County, judges are being pressured and publicized when they release people and reoffend, when in reality, that's where the bail bond companies' rule changes come in. How can we support them, these judges, to get their strong support and bring on board more judges? Movement.
Well, let me let me just offer a hard truth here. I don't think very many people in Harris County really cared too much what the Travis County District Attorney thinks. But I think that we have to be vocal generally about the fact that a wealth-based system makes our community less safe, and that we know that focusing on community safety is the way to ensure that we are increasing stability, that we are protecting people's freedoms, and as I said, that we're keeping our community safe. But the truth is that when it comes to the fight that's happening in Harris County, that fight has to be led by people living in Harris County. It has to be led by people in communities most impacted by those attacks in Harris County. And I, of course, can and will do anything I can from where we are. But the hard truth is that fight has to come from folks who live and face the consequences of those decisions every day.
Thank you, Dia Garza. Would anyone else like to answer? Or y'all pretty much in accord? I think it was really thoughtful that you said, you're in Travis County. You don't want to speak about other people's lived experiences. I see DA Middleton has come off mute. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, typically, and I think I know these guys well enough that I can say this, is that we all cringe when we watch the news and we see someone who is out on bond and has committed a violent offense. No one wants to see that. But the reality of it is that is the exception and not the rule. There was recently an article that pointed it out that most of the people out on bond are not violating. And so having that counter message out there that, hey, look, it's not a perfect system. We need to fine tune things. But, going back to the prior system that was 100% cash bail is not the option. And so just having some truthful conversations about it and not trying to downplay the unfortunate events is what we need to do. We just need to be better at what we do. But at the end of the day, say this all the time, the laws are written for the innocent, not the guilty. It's your rights and it's the people who are innocent that the law is trying to protect. And that's the system that we chose. And unfortunately, sometimes, there are people out there that are just evil. And the law is not written to punish them is written so that innocent people are not wrongly accused. And so, because of the nature of the laws, we see mistakes like that. But we're all working together and we all want to keep the community safe. Nobody on this panel wants to see people get harmed. And so we all have to work collectively and work smart to try to fix the problem instead of pointing fingers.
Thank you so much. All right, y'all. Our next question is from Veronica M. Nelson. With the legislative changes to bail from SB 6, how do you think these changes will affect bail reform? Do you foresee more lawsuits filed on bail systems as a result? So this one's about SB 6 and if there will be more lawsuits filed as a result.
Well, if I may, regardless of SB 6, I mean, it has its problems in it, but I think really the question is, should advocates go from county to county, especially the larger counties in Texas, and when appropriate, file bail reform lawsuits challenging the bail system? And I think generally speaking, we should do that. That should be done because that's how you get momentum. That's how you get change. And the district judges, federal district judges will look to what other judges have done. Other communities will look to what other communities have done within the state of Texas. And I think that's how you build consensus and momentum, and regardless of SB 6. So I think that it's a good idea to promote and file lawsuits and litigate them and force the stakeholders to come to the table and justify what they've done and the systems that they manage, which in most cases they can't and won't. And that's how you effectuate change, by going from community to community to community and litigating the same issue.
All right. Would anyone else like to answer this question? We only have one more question after this.
Well, I'll say this, and I think Laquito, you were down in Austin when I showed up and testified against SB 6, because I don't believe that it went far enough. I don't believe that it really entered, the critical issues of whether or not people who are low-level offenders are able to get out on PR bonds. So while arguably there's some good to SB 6, I really don't believe that it went far enough, and so I don't see a huge effect to the bail reform system. What I think is more important is what Mark has already talked about: education, that everyone understand that that first of all, one of our challenges, all five of us, is to convince our respective communities that we're not going to just sacrifice the safety of the community by recommending PR bonds on violent offenders. The rapists, robbers, and murderers, the way John mentioned. We're exercising our discretion. But when a system is based on a cash bail system as opposed to risk, then you're going to have that. You're going to have someone who, for example, is a high level, drug dealer who has a criminal history, but because he's done well in his career, has the $20,000 in his bank to get out on a $200,000 bond. And so where's the safety? Where's the safety to the community in that? And so I think what it is we need to educate everyone that what we're trying to do is improve the system and implement a system based on the risk to the community. And we're not, again, as some of our detractors have said, they go again, those liberal DAs in Texas, wanting to release everybody. No, we're exercising our discretion. But and I know, Laquita, you've mentioned before, what's positive that's happening in Bexar County is that we have the support of the sheriff and the county judge and the commissioner's court. They see the benefits to what we're doing, just like John's got the support, it sounds like, of the police chief. And so that's how we move the needle again, is by educating everybody that there's a benefit to doing it this way, that we're being smart on crime, not tough on crime.
I gotta raise a point here. I think that's often lost is that most of the time we get it right. It's just these exceptions that we see that get all the attention. So I think people need to understand that these bail decisions are made in a short period of time because of the presumption of innocence. I mean, in a perfect system, you making a risk assessment, man, you go out and you interview neighbors and relatives and figure out if this person is dangerous. But time doesn't allow, the law doesn't allow that type of thorough research. And so when you're making decisions based upon limited information, there will be mistakes. A lot of these people come in, and this is the most dangerous thing, is some of them have no criminal history, but that's because they just haven't been caught. And so on paper, they may look one way, but in actuality, they're more dangerous than it looks. And so it's an imperfect decision based upon imperfect information, and we have to make the best decisions. They won't be perfect decisions. So once I think the other side of the story about how frequently it is done right and that the community is still being kept safe, I think we'll move together, but we have to get beyond what is just simply a violation of the basic tenets of the American Constitution. And, you know, we have to get back to truth and justice.
That is a great point, D. Middleton. Everyone loves to point out the time that you were wrong, but they don't talk about all the times that you were right. Our final question of the evening is going to come from Jesse Gloria. What do y'all plan to do to push for bolder policies and more funding that address the root causes of mass incarceration? It's a little hot seat on this one.
Well, I think, and I'm so proud of all of my colleagues on this conference today. I know all of them have reforms that they have pushed through and are continuing to work on. In Travis County, like in many counties across the state and across the country, we are focused on addressing the root causes of violent crime and on addressing and preventing violence in our community before it happens. And if we can do those things, if we can ensure that we can identify people who may be at risk of committing violent acts before they do, if we can make the investments that we need to in communities that for too long have not had the resources they need to thrive, if we can do those things, then not only can we reduce the incidence of violence in our community, but we can also begin to address mass incarceration. We must rebuild our behavioral and mental health safety net in this state and in this country. It is heartbreaking that for too many people, the only place that they have access to mental health services is in our jails. If we can invest more in those services in our communities, we can greatly reduce the number of people who come into contact with our criminal legal system. It is heartbreaking that for too many people, the only place where they can access services to address substance use disorder is in our jails. And if we can increase resources for those services in our communities, not only will that keep our communities more safe, but it will also begin to tackle the crisis of mass incarceration in our country.
So if I may, I think that some of what Mr. Garza said, we're focusing on here, but we do it differently because of our communities. One of the things here that we have talked about is mental health and the absolute disgrace of our jails being the places where mental health is, I don't know about effective treatment, but that's where people are in a crisis. And so what this office has done is we've looked at money that we take in on asset forfeiture from drug dealers, pimps, and those kind of people. And this office over the years has piled up $4 to $5 million. Well, we're about to contribute $250,000 to Right Care for crisis intervention on the streets. Instead of people coming into contact with police and maybe being arrested or shot at, we're providing an opportunity for the police to put wraparound services around those individuals. We're also contributing between this office, Dallas County, our public hospital, and other stakeholders about $5 million for a facility for the criminal trespass and homeless to be taken to instead of to the Dallas County Jail. We've also contributed $200,000 to 4 of our cities for mental health assessment to be done by one of our entities here, probably our best entity in Dallas County, and maybe one of the best in the state to do that. And what's the purpose of that? To get ahead of the problem. We know that the jail is not the place, and we know that criminal justice is not designed to solve those issues. But we do have community-based services, and we're going to utilize them, and we're going to use money to encourage and focus on that. The thing that we've all done, I think, that helps end mass incarceration is our policies around low-level offenses. You've heard us talk, various ones of us talk about what those policies are, about declination, about not processing and filing and charging individuals charged with misdemeanor marijuana, criminal trespass, etc. Well, what that does, it doesn't stop the police from arresting, but when we don't charge in the long run, and we're seeing it here, there's a study done by the SMU Deason Criminal Justice Clinic looking at my policies, and it has impacted in a positive way police behavior. When I came here, the numbers just stayed steady every year, thousands of mostly young people, mostly people of color, 90+% arrested for minor offenses. Well, those numbers are plunging because we don't accept the cases. And so there's no value in them to arrest the individual when there's no charge to be filed. And you will see that happened in Houston. It's happened in San Antonio. It's happened all around this state. And as we implement policies to not prosecute, you're going to see the value of arresting someone become very low on the police scale of priorities. And so that's how you get change. And so investment, new direction, declination, focus on violent crime, being sensitive to the mentally ill, and not allowing our jails to be filled up with those individuals, with those cases, I think will bring about, once again, not immediately, but over a period of time, we'll begin to see mass incarceration reduced. And I think those are some of the things the tools that we have available to us to make that happen.
Let me just say first, at the risk of aging John Crusoe, when he was a district judge, was known as the leader of specialty courts, and he's brought that with him to the DA's office. And so in a lot of ways, he is the model that we use in Texas when it comes to specialty courts and diversionary programs. And so my hats off to John for doing an excellent job in that county. But I think all of us that are on this call can tell you that we've taken bold steps to improve a system that we found when we came into office. My mantra has been from the very beginning, I want to leave it better than how I found it. And hopefully the voters will hope that will agree with me. But we all, as John says, are doing our respective best to try and improve the problem of mass incarceration. But there's a lot of work. It's a work in progress. We're not going to do it overnight. When you think about the years and years of prosecution, how it was handled in Texas, it's a big ship to turn around. So we're not going to do it overnight. But we're making strides, and of course we're going to have detractors. But as the sheriff says all the time, jails are for people that we're afraid of, not people that we're mad at. We have, for example, in Bexar County, big domestic violence problems. So one of the things that we did is we restructured the personnel that were traditionally handling misdemeanor marijuana cases and moved them into the domestic violence division to handle those cases, because those are the ones that we need to be worried about that can result in a murder if it's not handled appropriately. But again, it's a work in progress. So I think we're all doing everything that we can, but we're going to continue to work hard, and we need your support and we need your help. And the best thing you all as an organization can do is get the word out that that us five are trying to improve the criminal justice system and prosecution, and so yes, let's continue to do the work that we all do together, and the tremendous work that TOP does.
Absolutely. And I love a part of what you said on the emphasis that this is going to be a journey. Like, we've got to keep taking the steps together. And we're about to ask y'all to take a pledge to be with us on that journey. But I do want to thank all of our commenters and the people that are watching us for asking all these great questions. I know that we couldn't get to all of the questions. There were so many, but thank you for doing that. If you can actually write your DA. Use your people power and political power fist. They will respond. So we are going to do a pledge. It's not just any pledge, it is a top pledge to continue to fight for bail reform and chipping away at mass incarceration. So now they're going to make me recite the pledge first. And I guess you can raise your right hand and say top, and I'll do it for y'all first. It's a little lengthy. Let's do it in chunks. So TOP believes that the thousands of people incarcerated across the state at the mercy of an unjust money bail system deserve a district attorney that will advocate on their behalf and help create a better system. Okay, I'm going to see if we can't put this in here for y'all because this is a lot. Clearly, I have never been sworn in or had to do a pledge before in my life. So let's try it in chunks. And I lost my pledge. Apologies. So, TOP believes
TOP believes
We
That
believe
that
We
the
lost
thousands of people incarcerated across the state
that the thousands of
Thousands of
people
people
incarcerated
incarcerated
across the state
state
at the mercy of an unjust money bail system
At the
at
mercy
the
mercy of
an
unjust
bail-
money bail system.
system
deserve a district attorney that will advocate on their behalf
deserve a district attorney
that will
that will advocate on their
on their
behalf
behalf
and create a better system.
And help
create
create
a better system.
better system.
Okay. And I was just informed that this whole long thing is not the pledge. It's before the pledge. You said I was going to recite it. I'm sorry, y'all. Okay. We know that justice, in particular for communities of color, is something that we have to demand and be ready to fight for through active participation at the ballot box and in the streets. We know that systems produce exactly what they are designed to produce, which is why a complete reimagination of our money bail system is needed. Our fight to end mass incarceration unapologetically centers the experiences of Black and Brown people in pursuit of justice. That is the spirit and vision we bring to our involvement in the bail reform movement across the state of Texas and across the country. We want our democracy to reflect our values and our people powered agenda. So now, DA panelists, please raise your right hand as I say the following. I stand with TOP
I stand with TOP
in being an advocate for progressive bail reform,
and being an
Being an
advocate
advocate for progressive bail reform,
not only during the 2022 election cycle,
not
not
only
only during the
during the
2022 election cycle,
but in the 2023 state legislative session,
and in the 2023 state
2023 state
legislative
legislative
Session
where we will once again fight
where we will once again fight
for the bail reform our communities deserve.
for the bail
for the bail
reform.
reform our communities deserve.
Great! That concludes the pledge. Thanks, everyone. We're going to pass it over to Laquita.
All right, all right. So thank you so much for guiding us through that pledge, Taryn. We really appreciate your efforts tonight. We also want to really appreciate our justice defending DAs for making time to join us tonight. I really do want to lift up this conversation around bail reform and thank everyone for incorporating the piece about addressing root causes to mass incarceration. As a directly impacted organizer who's out in the streets every day fighting alongside our top members to fighting towards the reality of bail reform, We also know, more importantly, that until we address the root causes of mass incarceration, like homelessness, mental health, and drug addiction, we're going to continue to see our jails being a revolving door, and continuing to see mass incarceration within our jails. So, Mark Gonzalez, you brought up the programs in Nueces County, John Crusoe, Jose Garza. I really do want to applaud your efforts in addressing root causes to mass incarceration, because I do believe that that is going to help in changing the narrative, the negative narrative around bail reform. Um, and again, so we do thank you for joining us tonight. Not only did you provide us with excellent information, you're working hard in your respective counties to enact the bold legal reforms that we Texans really do need. But with that being said, our work is far from done, and it's more important than ever that we keep building momentum for the change our communities deserve. We do this by utilizing the power of voices to organize to change hearts and minds, gradually shifting the political dynamic of our state. A few heart to heart conversations with friends or relatives might not seem like much, but it's how we get people to see things differently and build change. We want to really encourage you to share the links to these YouTube channels and these Facebook Lives so that your friends and families can continue to watch informational sessions like we're putting on here tonight. And so, with that being said, I'm going to pass the channel back over to Carvel.
Yes, thank you so much, Laquita. That was well said. We have to communicate with our networks, with our people, to build the people power. And so, on that note, we have three basic requests of you, all the viewers out there tonight, all the people who've been commenting, who shared on us with this live, with asking the questions to these DAs and getting the pledge from them and all of that. Before we wrap up tonight, um, there's three quick things that we want to go through. They're quick and easy, I should say. First off, be sure to like the Texas Organizing Project Education Fund page on Facebook. So you'll be able to go on there and you'll see that this is the top C3 Facebook page. So we have the regular Texas Organizing Project, and then we have Texas Organizing Project Education Fund page. And again, that is the Texas, that is, of course, the one that says Education Fund. And we'll make sure that we get it up for you here as well. And then you can type this directly into the Facebook search bar and like the page. That's all we need you to do. Just the first step. Just like being here showing up tonight was a good step. Secondly, let me put up two fingers. Secondly, we need you to sign TOP's Texas for All petition, to say you support our mission to build a Texas that serves all Texans. We know what we have now. We have this regime that's working for, one sort of people here in the state. We see that our state is made up greatly of people of color, and we should be represented, and the policy should reflect care for us as well. So, you can find the petition link here in the live stream in the comments, and it's the toptx.us/ Texas for All, TX for ALLSUP. And then lastly, let's see here, download our TOPS smartphone app, and you'll be able to receive top updates. You'll stay connected to our work, the work that we talked about earlier in the program. The app works both on iPhone and for Android users. So you can click on the app link in the live stream comments, and actually it's access it as well. And it's on our website as well. If you go to organizedtexas.org, and then you'll find it at the top app. And so, everyone, on behalf of TOP and my colleagues Laquita Garcia and Taryn Almendarez, we'd like to wish you a good night and thank you for joining us again. It's all about people power, showing up and holding the elected officials accountable, and then making the public aware of the education that has to be known so we can push for the policies that we need. So we're going to be ready to take it to the top.
Thank you all so much for being with us tonight. Go Justice Defenders.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night, Facebook.